Imagine a giant chalkboard, like one of those huge university ones, completely covered in quantum equations, sitting right next to a 3,000-year-old Sanskrit scroll.
Right, which sounds like a total contradiction.
Exactly. We are so culturally conditioned to treat them as enemies, like it's science versus myth, precision versus, well, poetry.
Yeah, that's the standard assumption.
But what if they are actually telling the exact same story about the mechanics of the universe, just using entirely different vocabularies?
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is opening this fascinating text called Brahmavad, which was authored by Goswami Shyam Manohar.
And it's really important to note right up front that this is not some dusty, purely academic reading.
Oh, definitely not.
It is a total collision between ancient Vedic philosophy, modern theoretical physics, and honestly, your own daily pursuit of meaning.
Yeah, your literal everyday life. The premise is just incredibly ambitious because it doesn't just ask what the universe is made of or, the timeline of its expansion. It dares to answer the ultimate question: why does any of this exist in the first place?
Okay, let's unpack this, because it really challenges how you and I actually perceive reality on a random Tuesday morning.
It really does.
Let's start with the biggest question possible. Where did everything come from? Because the text draws these direct, unapologetic comparisons between ancient Vedic concepts of creation and the absolute bleeding edge of modern science.
Right, like the Big Bang Theory.
A Big Bang, string theory, and even the concept of an oscillating universe. The idea that the universe endlessly expands and contracts over billions of years.
Yeah, the author literally lays them side by side to show this profound alignment in the underlying logic. A prime example of this is the concept of tamas.
Tamas. Okay, break that down for us.
So in ancient Vedic thought, tamas is characterized as a state of profound, completely unknowable darkness. It's like a cosmic sleep or inertia, right before the manifestation of reality.
Like before the universe even existed.
Exactly. And the text maps that ancient philosophical concept directly onto our modern understanding of singularities and black holes.
Which is a pretty bold leap, I have to say. I'm struggling a bit to see the bridge here. How do we leap from a philosophical state of, inertia to the literal physical reality of a black hole?
You mean where space-time itself breaks down?
Right. Aren't we just stretching a metaphor really thin to make it fit a modern scientific discovery?
I mean, that is the natural skepticism we all bring to ancient texts.
Yeah.
But the author argues it isn't just a poetic metaphor. It's an observation of the exact same phenomenon, just viewed from a different framework.
Okay, go on.
Think about a black hole. It is a literal state of unmanifestation. Matter is infinitely compressed, and gravity is so intense that the localized laws of physics, the ones we rely on, they just cease to function.
Right, like even light cannot escape.
Exactly. It is the ultimate darkness. So the text points out that the ancient sages were describing this exact state of infinite density and darkness from which reality emerges and eventually returns.
Oh, wow. And the text takes this a step further, right? With the concept of matter and antimatter annihilation.
Yes, that continuous cycle.
Where a particle and its exact opposite antiparticle collide and they just annihilate each other, leaving behind pure energy.
Yeah, the author compares that specific particle physics mechanism to the ancient philosophical ideas of cosmic creation and dissolution. Forms manifesting from raw energy and then resolving back into it. And what's fascinating here is how the author anchors this synthesis by bringing in modern scientific titans.
Right. He quotes some heavy hitters.
He extensively quotes Stephen Hawking, specifically his book The Grand Design, and also the physicist Richard Feynman.
I can definitely see why Feynman is referenced. I mean, he was a massive advocate for imagination and conceptual flexibility in theoretical physics, but bringing Stephen Hawking into a text on Vedic philosophy...
It seems like a stretch.
It seems almost contradictory at first glance, yeah.
It totally seems that way, until you look at a vital concept Hawking championed, which the author leans heavily on. It's called model-dependent realism.
Model-dependent realism. Okay, what is that?
So Hawking argued that science, at its absolute highest theoretical levels, does not have a direct pipeline to objective, absolute reality.
Wait, really? Science doesn't claim to know absolute reality?
Not at the theoretical edge, no. Science understands the universe entirely through the conceptual models it builds, like mathematical frameworks, localized observations. If a mathematical model accurately predicts what we observe, we all agree to call it true.
But the model is still just a localized representation.
Exactly. It is not the reality itself.
So, meaning A quark, for example, doesn't necessarily exist as a tiny, tangible billiard ball of matter that you could hold in your hand.
Right, it's not a physical speck in that way.
It exists as a highly accurate mathematical model that just explains the behavior of subatomic particles.
Precisely. And the author of Brahmovad argues that ancient philosophy operates on the exact same epistemological ground.
Oh, I see.
It builds conceptual models using language, metaphor, and rigorous logic to understand that identical reality. The mathematical equation and the Sanskrit verse, they are both just models.
So if we think of the text's mention of the Brahmanda, the cosmic egg from ancient literature, if science gives us the how with complex mathematical equations, are these ancient texts basically giving us the poetic why for the exact same cosmic events?
That's a great way to put it. They are mapping the motive while science maps the mechanics.
That's wild to think about.
And that synthesis naturally pushes us beyond the origin point. Building directly on your question about the why, we have to transition from the physical mechanics of creation to the actual purpose behind it.
Right, because if the universe exploded into existence, what was the motive? I mean, it clearly wasn't a factory churning out galaxies just to meet some cosmic quota.
No, exactly. And this is where the text introduces the concept of Leela, or Krida, which translates to divine play, or cosmic sport.
Play. Like a game.
Yeah. The philosophical argument here is that the creation of the universe wasn't driven by a lack of something. The originating force wasn't lonely, it wasn't driven by fear, and it wasn't acting out of some mechanical obligation.
So the universe is just a spontaneous, joyful expression.
Yes. The author uses these great examples of play. Think of a young child playing in a sandbox, completely unprompted. Or a master actor deeply engrossed in a dramatic role on stage.
Yeah.
Or even a ringmaster in a circus.
They aren't doing it because they're forced to.
Right. They engage in the act purely for the spontaneous joy of the expression itself. The universe is a spontaneous expression.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this.
Go for it.
If the fundamental nature of the universe is just a game or spontaneous play, how do we explain all the chaos and suffering we see? I mean, life is brutally hard for a lot of people. Does the text address this, or is it just sweeping the tough stuff under the rug to keep things upbeat?
That is the ultimate question, right? And the author calmly anticipates that exact friction. To address the reality of suffering, the text contrasts this Vedantic concept of play with other major philosophical frameworks.
Like which ones?
Well, he specifically debates the Buddhist concept of Shunyavada, which is the doctrine of void or emptiness, the idea that ultimate reality lacks inherent substance.
Okay.
And he also challenges the Jain concept of Anekantavada, which emphasizes that reality is fundamentally multifaceted and fragmented.
So how does this concept of Leela or play counter the idea of a void or a fragmented reality?
The author argues that if reality were truly a void at its core, spontaneous, sustained creations just wouldn't occur. Nothing comes from nothing. And if it were fundamentally fragmented, the universal laws of physics wouldn't hold consistently across the cosmos.
Which they do. Gravity works everywhere.
Right. So in the philosophy of Brahmavad, the fragmentation and the chaos, the suffering you mentioned, are localized. They are necessary, deeply interconnected components of an ultimate singular purpose.
Like friction.
Exactly. Think back to that master actor analogy. A great stage play absolutely requires tragedy, conflict, villains. Without friction, the narrative has no depth.
Oh, I see. So the actor playing the tragic hero might genuinely whoop on stage. Like they're experiencing real physiological grief within the context of the scene, but their ultimate reality, the fact that they are a safe, whole person performing a role, remains totally unchanged.
That is the core of the argument right there. The suffering and chaos are intensely real within the localized context of the play. The text does not deny human pain at all.
That's an important distinction.
Very. But it argues that the overarching substrate of the entire production remains an expression of an absolute joyful reality.
But wait, if the underlying nature of the universe is this spontaneous play, this naturally leads to a problem with the human experience.
How so?
Well, why aren't we experiencing this cosmic joy all the time? If the universe is fundamentally an expression of joy, why is my default baseline so often, stress or anxiety rather than joy?
To resolve that, the text unpacks a foundational triad, Sat Chidananda, which translates to truth, consciousness, and bliss.
Okay, Sat Chidananda.
And the author draws a razor-sharp critical distinction between ordinary sensory pleasure, which is what we are constantly chasing, and true Ananda.
We definitely treat those as the same thing in English. Pleasure, happiness, joy, bliss. They're all just synonyms to us.
Right. But philosophically, they are entirely different mechanisms. Sensory pleasure is strictly finite. It is entirely attached to external objects.
Like buying a new car or eating a great meal.
Exactly, or getting a promotion. But because it is tethered to objects that inherently decay or change or break, sensory pleasure mathematically guarantees future sorrow.
Because you eventually lose the object.
Right. When the object is lost or just when the dopamine hit wears off, the pleasure vanishes. Ananda, conversely, is described as an absolute limitless state. It doesn't depend on an external object at all.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text illustrates this with a specific anecdote, right? The one about the sage Yajnavalkya and his wife Maitreyi.
Yes, it's a brilliant story. So the sage is preparing to leave his life as a householder to go meditate in the forest, and he offers to divide his vast wealth between his wives.
And Maitreyi looks at this enormous fortune, this life-changing money, and she rejects it. She asks this piercing question: what will I do with this if it doesn't give me immortality?
Or ultimate bliss.
It's like she realizes that accumulating finite objects, no matter how many you get, will never add up to the infinite.
Never.
It's like, okay, think of sensory pleasure like renting a luxury sports car. It's thrilling, the adrenaline is incredible, but you spend the whole time stressed about scratching the paint, and you're acutely aware that you have to give the keys back at the end of the day.
That's a perfect modern analogy.
True. Ananda, according to this text, is like owning the very concept of driving. You aren't worried about losing the car because the joy isn't in the object, it's in the state of being.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Maitreyi's rejection of the wealth speaks directly to the listener's daily life. The author is diagnosing why we are all so exhausted.
Oh, totally.
Our entire societal structure is built on chasing material milestones. The next degree, the next house, the social validation. We are perpetually trying to extract infinite ananda from finite objects. The text warns that we are looking for the cosmic play in the wrong domain.
So we have this ultimate cosmic reality modeling the universe, and we have this boundless joy, this ananda. If this is the fundamental truth, why is it so incredibly hard for humans to grasp it or even agree on it?
Well, the text blames our tools, specifically human cognition and language.
Or language is the problem.
Yeah, the also dives deep into the severe limitations of how we communicate, introducing the epistemological concept of apoha.
Apoha, meaning what?
It's the method of defining things by what they are not. It's often phrased in ancient texts as neti neti, which means not this, not this.
Oh, like a process of negation.
Exactly. Because the ultimate reality is so vast, the moment you try to put a neat linguistic label on it, you shrink it. You can only chip away at what it isn't.
Like a sculptor removing marble to reveal the shape underneath.
Yes. When you try to define the infinite with finite words, you instantly create boundaries that don't actually exist. And the text brings in these brilliant linguistic examples to demonstrate how flimsy our language models really are.
Like the onomatopoeia analogy.
Yes, think about how we imitate sounds.
Right, so a dog barks in the street. The actual sound waves the dog produces are a physical, objective reality. But if you ask an English speaker to describe that reality, they will confidently say the dog said, bow wow.
But ask a Hindi speaker and they will insist the dog said bye bow.
And a Japanese speaker might say, wan wan. So the language is just an approximation of reality, not the reality itself.
Exactly. The human brain takes a highly complex reality and aggressively compresses it into a localized, arbitrary linguistic model. All language functions this way. The word water is a useful model, but the word itself will never quench your thirst.
And the author drives this home with that really memorable analogy of the parrot, the popat.
Right. You can train a parrot to mimic human speech perfectly. Like Pavlov's dogs, it learns through conditioning.
It can look right at you and say, I love you, or give me a biscuit, and the pronunciation is perfect.
The parrot has mastered the syntax, the form of the language, but it possesses zero semantic understanding.
Nothing.
It has no comprehension of the profound emotional depth behind the phrase, I love you. It is mimicking the form entirely without experiencing the substance.
This raises an important question. Are we doing the exact same thing?
That's the mirror the text holds up to us.
In our fierce scientific debates or our rigid theological arguments, are we essentially just acting like that parrot, repeating complex jargon, whether it's quantum entanglement or neti neti, without ever actually experiencing the underlying truth?
It's a sobering thought. When we argue over whose mathematical model or religious text is superior, we are essentially two parrots arguing over who is pronouncing I love you correctly while completely missing the actual experience of love.
Wow, so what does this all mean? How does the listener actually apply this model-dependent view of language to their own life?
By recognizing that this isn't nihilistic, it's incredibly liberating. When you internalize that your conceptual frameworks, your opinions, your scientific models are just tools rather than absolute truths, you stop fighting to defend them so aggressively.
You develop intellectual humility.
Yes, you realize the physicist and the mystic are both just humans trying to map the infinite. It shifts your energy from furiously arguing about the labels to actually seeking the experience of that underlying joy.
It fundamentally takes the pressure off. You do not have to have the universe perfectly figured out and labeled in order to actively participate in it.
Exactly.
Well, we have covered massive ground today on this deep dive. We traveled from the theoretical physics of black holes and mapped them to ancient cosmic eggs. We explored the universe not as a cold machine, but as a spontaneous act of play.
We dissected the true nature of infinite joy versus rented pleasures.
Right. And finally, we realized that the very words we use to argue about all of it are just rough translations of a dog's bark.
It really is a remarkable philosophical synthesis. Brahmavad tears down the artificial walls we build between scientific and spiritual disciplines.
Which leaves us with a provocative final thought for you, the listener, to ponder today. If Stephen Hawking and ancient sages agree that our understanding of reality is entirely dependent on the mental models we build,
And our words are just imperfect echoes.
what happens if, just for today, you stop trying to perfectly describe the universe and just allow yourself to play your part in it? Think back to that giant chalkboard and that ancient scroll. They aren't fighting each other. They're just two different invitations to join the exact same game.